All right, we are live and on the air. Happy Webinar Wednesday to you. I'm Steve Siebersod coming to you from the campus of Binghamton University on behalf of the Alumni Association. I am absolutely thrilled to welcome you to today's webinar titled Generative AI in Legal and Project Management, and this is part of the Binghamton Learning Network webinar series. Thanks so much for joining us today. This is part of the lifelong learning offerings that we have through your Alumni Association, and I'll pull up our website address here on the screen if you want to learn more about what it is that we have to offer. Of course, check this out after the webinar today. The webinar series is just one of the many lifelong learning programs that we have. There's an alumni travel program, a Tier Talk speaker series, and also through the Alumni Association, you can be involved with the university in almost any way that you would like to be. We have volunteer opportunities, events that are live in person or virtual, such as this one, and many ways that you can support your alma mater. So check it all out at binghamton.edu/advancement/connect. And I'll leave that up for a couple more seconds as I talk about the housekeeping and the format for today. So we'll go to about 1 o'clock, not necessarily a hard stop and go a little bit after if we keep having good questions, good content, but we want your questions. And the presenter and I want to have this as an interactive program. So start now thinking of questions, and you can email them to me at this address, and I'll put this back up from time to time during the program. So if you don't get it down here right away at the beginning of the program, not a problem. This will be something that you'll see again throughout the hour. scpers at binghamton.edu. If you're watching on the microsite or on Facebook, there should be a place there for comments. Send your questions in as comments, and we will get these mixed in. And it's not one of these wait till the end to get your questions when you don't really care about what the question is anymore, you forgot. We will get these in real time, and then of course leave a little bit of time at the end of the program to get your questions into the mix as well. So start thinking of something now, and we will get those going for you. So now, without much further delay, let's get on to the program for today, Generative AI in Legal and Project Management. So we'll give a nice big warm Binghamton welcome to Simone Sterling, and she is from the class of 1998. After graduating from Binghamton, she got her law degree at Indiana University, has extensive experience in the legal profession and in project management, and I'll leave it to her to talk about all of that versus me reading quite a lot, which is not as interesting to get into. So Simone, welcome. Thank you so much for being part of the webinar today.
Sure. Thank you, Steve, for inviting me to speak today. I just wanted to start off by saying that, I'm also a novice at generative AI because it is a relatively new emerging technology. And so as I'm learning, I came on today because I wanted to share what I've learned over the past year or so being a project manager in a law firm setting. And in that setting, just learning more about generative AI and understanding it from that context, but understanding that it can be used across various different industries and hoping that we can have an interactive session. So if you have questions, as I'm going through, I have a few notes. So if you see me looking back and forth, it's just because I'm looking at my notes as I'm trying to just make sure that I recall everything that I wanted to address today. And, I don't know where everyone is in their sort of generative AI journey, but I just initially want to give a definition because AI has been around for a long time. Artificial intelligence has been around for a long time, but I think now there's quite a bit of a buzz, what they call the hype cycle in generative AI around generative AI. So I have a definition here. I'm not sure if this encompasses, the full scope, but it basically says that it's a new approach where AI just doesn't analyze data, but creates new content. So for instance, writing text, generating images, coding, composing music, and that's really based on what the tool has learned. So as you sort of feed information into a large language model, and some of these things are also, definitional things that I've learned over the course of the year that I've been, become more involved with generative AI. So I will send around some resources at the end of the session just for you to take away if you do want to learn more about AI and just understand that it has its own lingo, its own vocabulary. There are times when I'm in meetings and people are, when I started this journey, when people were talking about, hallucinations. And I was like, what is that? So, me being the person that I am, I was curious to go and look that up and, research different avenues to find out what some of those things mean. And some of the resources that I'll share afterwards are, different groups that I've joined, whether they're on Meetup, Eventbrite, different places where people are trying to come together to educate one another or to share resources so that we can all become AI literate and understand what this means in the greater context. So, with that being said, if anyone has any questions, I am happy to be interrupted. I am happy to answer any questions as you have them. Pop them in the chat, email Steve, and he will, chime in and let me know when there are questions if people have them. But at the outset, I just want to kind of talk about my journey and what I've learned over the course of the past year. So when I took the role with Schulte, Roth, and Zabel, it was really primarily to be the project manager who was helping to implement a generative AI tool within the law firm setting, right? And what that meant was that the firm really wanted to invest in a tool that will allow the attorneys and their business staff to, experiment, use generative AI to really understand their own internal, data without having it being, exposing their confidential information to the World Wide Web, essentially, right? So our platform was based on open AI. Now, for those, I guess, who are much more literate on generative AI, you are aware, of course, that there are a plethora of other generative AI systems out there in the market. In the legal context, you have companies like CoCounsel, you have companies like Harvey, you have lots of other companies that are entering the space because there is such a buzz around this technology. But for the purposes of this conversation, we were using our own internal tool, working with the development team to develop that technology and utilize that to understand our own data, prompt our own data, and provide some parameters around, who could use it, when they could use it, why they could use it, and I'll talk about some of the maybe resistance or other challenges along the way. So essentially, I just want to kind of start off with talking about, why law firms in particular are interested in using Gen AI. Clients are expecting that law firms are going to use AI for efficiency and for innovation purposes, right? You also have some, competitive differentiation for organizations that are using AI. And it's also a way to attract talent, like myself. I was attracted to this law firm because they were using AI, and I was beginning to upskill myself in that technology and in that area. So that was one of the things that drew me to the role. So as a project manager, I came in, I was working with the IT department because they were the ones who were primarily using the AI, working with the development team to roll out particular features based on what our audience, seemed to need, wanted to get more involved with, and things of that nature. And also with our knowledge management, our innovation team. As time went on, trying to, I guess, get people to user adoption, right? Getting people to use the technology. I would say it was an uphill battle, right? Because some people were hesitant to use the technology for a variety of different reasons. And so some of the things that we did were we had a promptathon, right? Where we had first year associates come in and, we explained to them how to use the technology, what, some prompts are. That's another sort of definitional thing. It's basically just asking the tool, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Claude, whether it's Perplexity, whatever tool that you're using, to prompt the tool to give you some output based on what it is that you're seeking to find out from the tool. And so I think on a monthly basis we would look at different ways to benchmark the usage by the teams and understand, where are the use cases that we can apply Gen AI and get people within the different, practice groups within the law firm to utilize the tool, whether it's for efficiency, productivity, just understanding how they can use it to make some segments of their work much more efficient, so that, if it was something that they could, utilize generative AI for, that would be a good opportunity for them to use the tool rather than trying to do that work for themselves manually, save themselves some time. So from that perspective, I would say that, I'll give you some examples of some use cases across different practice groups that I think are useful just for people to kind of understand. But with that being said as well, there are some concerns I think that people had. And those may just be from, highly high profile cases that I think, was splashed across the paper, splashed across, legal, just different legal publications that maybe, people were hesitant to use it, right? So I think there are sort of corollary concerns. Data privacy, a bias for a particular model, right? So we were using the OpenAI system. And if you're using something else, at home, if you're using ChatGPT at home, or you're using another tool at home, I think there was just a lot of comparison between, like, which of these should I be using, which of these is better for the purposes. And so there are some people within the population that were more tech savvy. And those are the individuals that I would work with, along with the other team members that I was working with, to understand how people were using it. So we would set up different pilot groups and have those people, do the testing on, certain aspects of the tool every single month once a new feature was rolled out. I think we had like a 6 to 8 week cycle of when new features would be rolled out, and those features would then be communicated to those teams. A portion of their time would be spent, looking at, a new feature. So for instance, at one point you could upload documents into ChatGPT and have that document, and then prompt the system to look for certain things in that document. So one example that I would give you is in the corporate and M&A space, right? Mergers and acquisitions. You could have the tool do contract review, right? So you could upload a contract. And like I said, because this was containerized within the firm setting, it's not being, that information is not being disseminated outside of the firm. It's all the firm's data, and it stays within the confines of the firm. So you could upload the contract, and you could prompt the system to ask it to look for certain clauses, decipher certain things that you wanted it to look for. And so that would be one use case for the corporate and the mergers and acquisitions team to utilize. There are different things that you could use it for, which is to draft certain documents, like an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, and to compare terms in a deal. So that's one setting. I think there are some other, use cases. And I think that's really where the promptathon came in, right? Trying to get people to figure out, like, how could you use this in your everyday life? And how could that help you to understand how to make your day, easier using these tools? So another aspect here that I, excuse me, I did some research to basically try to, point our teams in different directions to say, okay, how can I leverage AI to support the type of work that I'm doing, right? Another area that I think was much easier for people to look at adoption is in the intellectual property area. So, for instance, if you had, let's say you had a policy or some licensing or contracts and agreements in the IP space, you could use the AI tool to draft patent specifications and generate alternative claim wordings. Now, it doesn't give you the exact, I would say it doesn't give you the exact response that you're looking for the first time that you prompt the system, right? There may be times that you have to iterate that response. So if it gives you something at the outset, you have to keep, maybe prompting it to get to a more granular level to understand, deeper what it is exactly that you're looking to get out of the tool. And so I think that part of the learning and part of the process for the person using the generative AI tool is just to constantly refine your prompts so that you're not disappointed, I guess, at the outset at the response that you're getting back, so that you're constantly just making sure that you're asking, the specific questions so that you can get to the root of what it is that you're ultimately hoping to understand about the output that you're expecting to get. There are other areas that we are looking at in terms of using AI in the practice group setting. So some other areas would be in the trust and estates area, and in the litigation area. I think it depends on what practice groups your particular law firm, if you're in a law firm setting, is utilizing the tool for. So that's from the practice group setting. There are other instances where, from the business professional side, the project management team, could be using the tool. HR can be using the tool. And so for things like onboarding new employees, doing exit interviews, there are lots of different things that the tool can be utilized for depending on what business function you are within the organization. So we also had a day where we just, had the tool available. We have a period of time during the day on certain days when we go into the office where we have free snacks in the cafeteria. And so at that time, because people are already there, they're already engaged, you call them over, we have computers set up, we have the people who are the subject matter experts to answer questions, and people can sit down with you and, prompt the tool, upload documents, do different things that maybe they didn't know they could do using the generative AI tool, or maybe they just had not touched the tool. And so this gave them an opportunity to touch the tool, ask their questions, and see firsthand how they could use it. And then I think that would lend itself to more comfortability, so that the next time that maybe they had to use the tool for some particular reason, they could feel more comfortable because they've already put their hands on it. And I also think, just from the legal standpoint, there are lots of different, I guess I would say, decisions or commentary coming in from the Association of the Bar, the American Bar Association, as well as State Bar, giving their perspectives on, responsible AI adoption, right? So within that context, I would say that what I've observed is that most organizations have an AI governance policy where they basically outline what you can and cannot do using AI in the work context, especially for attorneys. There's different, rules that they have to follow. It's sort of like a company's, code of conduct, if you will. I would say this is kind of an extension of that, where, you're allowed to use it for these purposes, or you have to have some oversight around it so that people, understand what they can and cannot use it for within the work context. And I think some of that is also just related to, client confidentiality. You don't want to expose things, into the general, outside public domain with some of this information. So the purpose of having the internal tool that has those safeguards, that has those, parameters around it, and it's only company data, and it's kept within the confines of those walls, is basically to ensure that, confidential documents are not, being put out into the public domain, and things that clients don't want outside of the firm's environment are accounted for. Let's see. So I think some other things to bear in mind as well are some of the governance and oversight aspects. There, I think a lot of companies are also, or at least in the law firm setting, are thinking about forming things like an AI steering committee. Those individuals are well versed enough in the technology that they are the ones who are basically guiding the sort of like policies, the procedures, who is going to, be on the pilot team to look at what technologies are being unfolded. Maybe they're looking at demos of other tools that other vendors are trying to get the firm to utilize, whether it's, like I mentioned, Harvey before, they are specifically a law firm, generative AI tool, and they have particular use cases that they would want to showcase to a law firm to say, hey, we have these particular tools that will help you do your work more efficiently. And, here they are. And so that's something that the AI steering committee would meet on a monthly basis or quarterly or whatever the designation is by the firm to outline, how often those meetings would take place. So there also were, policies established for prompt engineering, right? How do you use the prompts to get to the ultimate goal that you want to get by looking at, whether you're using some best practices, what are the formulas that you're using to get to the goal? And of course, as part of that team with the innovation team and the knowledge management team, there are times when, different associates would come and ask certain questions, if I wanted to, do this particular task, and I've tried it myself and it didn't necessarily come out, the way I wanted it to, can you help me to figure out how to make this more granular so that I can utilize that information to get me to the end goal? So I think some of that is, part of what the governance and oversight, policy aspect was.
Simone, I'd like to, I'm sorry,
Sure.
pardon the interruption. It's kind of a play on words with a Binghamton alum hosting, pardon the interruption. I just thought of a question. I figured I'd ask it before we got a little bit too further down the road. From your side, as an attorney and, thinking about how other attorneys might view this and looking at generative AI and the fact that it has such a low barrier to entry. Is there a concern about that? Not so much that law firms would lose business to people that are doing their own legal, but just that you have the potential for problems with untrained people. Sort of, let me plug into ChatGPT and have it spit me out a will or have it spit me out a contract. And think about that disclaimer that you have that's always there at the bottom of the screen. ChatGPT can make mistakes, and certainly it can do that. But this is probably an area where you don't want to go it by yourself. It can get into a really dangerous predicament if things don't go right.
Yes. So I was recently at a conference, and it wasn't necessarily about legal, but I did encounter someone there who has her own private practice. And what she described is that she does have clients who will, bring her a contract and say, I ran this through ChatGPT and this is what I was told. But I think that is not necessarily, I would say, not necessarily the wisest course of action for a layperson to take, is to kind of do it. Think about it this way: like if you were to go online and type in a bunch of different symptoms that you have, and you tried to treat yourself because the Google or some other, maybe ChatGPT gave you a response and said, okay, you have, I don't know, like meningitis, and then it says, these are the things that you should do to cure yourself, right? Or this is what you should do to relieve your pain. That doesn't necessarily replace the education and the the experience that the doctor has, right? So I think that if people are thinking that they can use generative AI to sort of, I guess, cut out the attorney and avoid those fees, they may find themselves on the I guess the losing end of the stick when it's all said and done, because they won't have had the benefit of the expert, right? The person who is skilled in that area, who's gone to school, who studied that particular area of law and has been advising clients and knows, how to respond to those particular issues. So I would not advise for people to use ChatGPT or any other AI tool to like ultimately resolve their issue, because I still think there is a need for that human, what they call in the generative AI area, human in the loop. You still need a human to look at the terms of that contract and advise you as to whether or not that is in your best interest. Where, the tools are getting better at doing reasoning, but they're never going to, I don't say never, because there's a lot of development happening every day. But I would say at this point, it's still an emerging technology. It's still fairly new. And I think you still need, an attorney in the process to look at the contract and to give you that advice rather than just depending on the tool.
Well, that's a great analogy, comparing it to medical. And it would seem very unwise for somebody to try to use ChatGPT to self-diagnose in something of a serious nature, or maybe not as much. You need that expertise from a medical doctor. So ChatGPT is only going to do so much, and you don't have that when you're by yourself and asking it to spit out contracts. And also, as part of that is not only having that knowledge to examine what is the output and being able to assess the accuracy of it, but then also it's a matter of what's being put into it, determining what gets put out. And so garbage in, garbage out, good output or good input, good output. So being able, as you said, to do the prompts properly and making adjustments from there. And I remember seeing something that, like, a common trap of people doing prompts and not doing them properly in the beginning is they're asking too much from the prompt, and it needs to be broken down into several simple prompts instead of one thing asking like 8 questions at once. It's just not going to give you something really, really valuable in response to that.
Yes. So to that end, also wanted to talk about, having a set of pilot programs, right? So you roll out this technology. You also want to be able to kind of survey your audience. So there are people who are, either raise their hands, or, if the IT department knows that a particular person is more tech savvy than others, maybe they'll say, okay, when you're reaching out to individuals, include this particular person. They are very familiar with technology. They've been using AI. Maybe they've been using it outside of the firm setting for, their own personal use, but they know it well enough that they could take that knowledge and transfer it into the work setting, right? And so those are the individuals that you would want to have as part of your pilot program. And you can identify low risk, high impact areas for, people to pilot. You can give them particular prompts that they can utilize that would be successful in a particular area, or you can just have them give their own input, because they've already been using the technology. They've already had some whether it's successes or failures, and they can provide that to the firm just to get some feedback there. Other things that we wanted to do as well is to sort of measure the ROI, right? What is the return on investment? You invest all of this money into these technologies, right? And so you want to be able to see who's using it, how successful have they been at efficiently using the tool. You have to think about, how many billable hours are being saved by using this technology. Are there reduction in errors that are being realized? And so those are some other aspects as well. The other thing that, from an implementation strategy standpoint, that one wants to take into consideration is you want to be able to upskill your attorneys and your staff, right? So for instance, if someone is, I don't know, maybe coming from another firm, or they've been at the firm for a very long time, you still want to be able to give them, some, like, from a professional development standpoint, you want to be able to offer this as an opportunity for them to become more AI literate, because as I'm sure, everyone who's been involved in this space knows, this is the buzz. This is what everyone's talking about. We have to become, AI literate, because this is not looking as if it's going away anytime soon. And so you want to be able to provide this as an opportunity for people to professionally develop, to have a hand in the understanding of how this tool works, and being able to utilize that efficiently, so that no one is sort of like, left behind. And as a matter of fact, I know some of the law schools, the ones I think that are being a little bit more innovative, are actually implementing tools like Harvey AI into their curriculum, and they're leveraging AI so that their students are already familiar with it before they actually go out into the workforce and start, a job and so forth. One of the things that happened over the summer was that we did have some, foundational generative AI courses, whether it was just for the firm at large or for certain groups. So like, we have summer associates who are coming in, they're just there for the summer to work and, experience, a particular practice area. Maybe they will get an offer to come back to the firm or not. But this is one of the offerings. You wanted to upskill those people and at least expose them to using the technology, so at least they understand what it's all about. And I think that was also something to draw people in if they were already involved or interested in generative AI. So the other part of that is just encouraging responsible experimentation, because you're at work and they're basically paying you to learn this technology. I think that's a win-win. I think from a risk and mitigation standpoint, right? I mentioned before some of the data privacy aspects that people were concerned with. There are client confidentiality, considerations. There's data security considerations that, one needs to take into consideration when you're using, artificial intelligence, especially in the work space. So, taking those into consideration, along with, the risk that the tool could, hallucinate, make up information that is not accurate, especially if you're like in the litigation field, right? The litigation practice group. You don't want to produce a brief that has erroneous information. You don't want to produce something to the court that does not have accurate information in it. So, you want to make sure that you check the output. I kind of liken it to when you're doing legal research in law school. You still have to check and make sure that that citation is accurate. You don't want to produce or provide a brief that has inaccurate information. You still have to do that due diligence. And so I think it's the same thing with AI. You still have to check your work. It's like math. Check your work. Make sure that it's accurate. So I think that those things have not gone out the door, have not gone out the window. I still think that people are very much a part of the consideration. You can't just blindly take anything out of the generative AI tools and just think that that's the be all and end all of it.
I'll jump in with two viewer questions,
Sure.
if I could.
Sure.
These come by way of Jeff from Endicott, and here's the first question. In litigation or contract preparation, can the AI tool be used to suggest various legal strategies and AI's estimate of the success of each strategy?
Well, Jeff, I think for that particular question, you could prompt the tool to ask it, very specific answers, that you're seeking to get the responses to. And I think you have to, break it down into further, iterate that question further to get to the response. But again, I think I would just go back to caution that whatever the tool outputs may not necessarily be the sort of be all and end all of that question. You can ask it just to, I think of it this way, right? It's a starting point, right? You may want to just understand what the whole life cycle of the case is. So you can ask it certain questions, but I wouldn't say that that should be the sort of endpoint, right? You want to kind of get some ideas by prompting the tool, but I wouldn't say that that's the be all and end all of it. You still need to, I think, involve, someone with the expertise in that area to get your final response.
I'll go to his next question, and
Sure.
I think the answer may be part of what you just gave us. In the preparation of a legal brief, I've heard that AI has made up cases to defend its position. How can a lawyer trust the output of an AI brief? You mentioned that clients want their lawyers to utilize AI to be more efficient in the sense of taking less time to develop a case or contract. If AI recommendations cannot totally be trusted, it would seem that all of the information provided by AI would have to be cross-checked by a lawyer, thus negating any time savings. I think we may have hit this before, but I'll leave it up to you.
Sure. So yes, so some of that was previously answered, but I would say in the context of the law firm that I was referring to before, you do have a universe of information that the tool would be fed that information, right? So you kind of have a template of, in this particular practice group, these are how some of these types of cases had been answered in the past. So, you can create your own, GPT instance and sort of create that universe of information that you're feeding into the tool. I think that helps with some of the hallucination risks because it's only being fed certain information. It can output that information, right? But if you're just using a large language model, just with all of the information that could possibly be out there, I think you're exposing your data and your information to much more risk because it is just going to pull from, whatever sources. So like if you go into ChatGPT, it'll tell you what the sources are that it pulled that information from. But I still think you need to double check whatever it is that your output is before you produce that to the court. Maybe a secondary set of eyes on the information, or doing whatever cross-checking you need to check to ensure that the information that you're producing to the court is accurate, because you do have to, I think that's just a responsible thing for you to do if you're going to produce a brief. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay. So I can go ahead and pause here at this point if anyone has any other examples of things that they've seen as challenges, or any success stories, or if people have done anything with any prompts that they want to share with the rest of the audience. If you don't, then I can just continue on with my presentation and just kind of let the chips fall where they may. But I'll give a pause there if anyone has anything they want to input at this point.
And we can chat here just a little bit to buy some time for that to happen. And so certainly if you have anything that you'd like to share, whether it's a question or a comment, go ahead and send it to the email address here that's up on the screen. I have my email up in another tab. That's how we got Jeff's questions into the mix. And we'll be able to get these added to the program as they come in here in real time. But, super fascinating so far to look at all these different use cases for generative AI, and to hear about the impacts on the legal profession. And so great to see that the technology is embraced, certainly with some caveats around it, but it adds value rather than takes away. And it's very interesting to see that. And, I think about in the work that I do in marketing, I can go ahead and say, hey, ChatGPT, give me a marketing plan. And I certainly want to check the output, but I generally don't do that because I feel like in this role, especially, that my employer probably wants to see like how I think and reason on my own, and want to come up with Steve's own ideas, not necessarily Steve's edits on a ChatGPT. But once in a while, it's okay to mix that in. It doesn't mean that it's a bad thing necessarily. Sometimes it gets stuff that you don't think about. So so far, we don't have any additional questions or comments coming by email. So I'd say it's probably safe to go ahead to whatever's next, and we certainly can come back to it as needed.
Sure. So another thing that I would say from a piloting perspective, the firm was looking at is Microsoft CoPilot, right? And I was also attending on a monthly basis outside of the workplace where I do my own, AI research and join other groups. And, there are people in my network who send me things, and I, kind of add those into my, repertoire so I can understand what's going on in the field. The CoPilot instance, right? Figuring out, like, do we want to incorporate CoPilot into our set of tools that we're using internally, right? And so I think some of the questions there were, okay, well, what's the difference between ChatGPT and what's the difference between CoPilot? And that's where I'm saying that there are so many different people, so many different vendors on the market who want to sort of say, like, here's our value add. This is why you should use our tool versus the other tool. But you also have to also think about the expense of having all of these various different tools in in the workplace, and the cost of all of these various different systems. So the reason that I think Copilot is attractive for some organizations, right, particularly like a law firm, is you have the sort of value add that Microsoft markets is that you can do things in Word, Teams, and PowerPoint, Excel, and all of these things that are already Microsoft tools that you're utilizing, but now you're just adding that AI component to it. So rather than having to use various different tools, you can use all of that in conjunction with each other. So in the instance of project management, right? And I thought this was great. We had a demo from Microsoft about how different departments could use Copilot, and given some prompts and some other, like, top 10 use cases. And one of them, some of the potential benefits they offered for the project management, because I sit in the project management office, is to say, you can use, Copilot to create a project plan, right? So if you wanted to, say, for instance, revise certain procedures that you have within the organization, right? From a project management perspective, you could use Copilot to do that using Word, making sure that your writing is like better quality, revising first drafts. So, the example that you gave, Steve, is that, let's say you came up with your own marketing plan, but then you want to run it through Copilot in Word to make sure that, your wording, the verbiage sounds much more crisp, or, you just want to kind of have a second pair of eyes on it. Copilot in the PowerPoint context, you could use it to create a presentation and create a project plan using the PowerPoint functionality. You also have, different opportunities to coordinate updates using Microsoft Teams. You can also do brainstorming in, Copilot in Word. And they also had something that I thought was interesting, which was like, a prompt library. So instead of you creating your own prompts, Microsoft had already sort of created a bunch of different prompts that, you can just plug into their Microsoft chat for the different organizations. So if you were in operations, you already had a very finite set of tools that you could utilize. And these things are all available on Microsoft. I think it's called a Microsoft 365 Starter Series. So if you're interested in exploring that, you can do that. It's all publicly available. You also have, other opportunities here to, like, if you were responding to an RFP, which is a request for, that it stands, request for procurement, I believe is what it stands for. I can't remember. But if you wanted to create a particular email response to send back to the vendors that were, responding to your RFP, you could use the tool to create professional emails and utilize that from a perspective to, do summarizations. You could use Copilot to do research responses, right? So lots of different use cases that they would give you. And they also have some YouTube recordings on how the teams who are developing these tools at Microsoft 365, where everything is kind of incorporated together from an AI perspective. Those things would be explained to you there as well. I do think that YouTube has quite a lot of information that you can understand generative AI using, there's different channels, different people who are publishing information there. Microsoft being one of them. There are other people who are doing tutorials. There are courses on Coursera, Udemy, LinkedIn Learning. I know Binghamton has a LinkedIn Learning account that you can utilize. So if you wanted to learn more about AI, you can utilize that as a resource as an alumni. And there just are so many opportunities for you to upskill and to become more literate in AI if that's something that you're interested in doing. And I think, like I said, everyone is at a different stage of learning about the technology, but as you start to go to these different seminars, it's an opportunity for you to learn more. Another thing that I would say for me that's been a game changer. So using AI to take notes. So right now we have two firms merging, and with that happening, there are a lot of meetings, right? And so you're expected to take notes and expected to record these notes and have them available for if someone wants to look at them later on to refer to a decision that was made. AI has been a game changer in that regard, right? We have tools, custom GPTs that have been created to allow you to take the notes from a Zoom meeting, dump it into the AI, and have it generate the action items, who said what at the meeting, what needs to be followed up on at the next meeting, and things of that nature. So that's a game changer for me personally. And not having to sit there and try to take notes and remember everything that was said and, generate those meetings and kind of do all of the follow-up. So I do think there are many opportunities to utilize generative AI to make your work easier and better. I think there is some comfortability that has to happen. A lot of experimentation, figuring out which of the tools are best for you as an individual user. They all have their strengths, they all have their weaknesses. And I would say, I think Google Gemini is another tool that people are very excited about. There's Notebook LM from Google. There are lots of different companies that are kind of in this space that are trying to, I guess, I would say one up each other to say like, hey, we have this particular thing. Our tool can do this, but I think you have to kind of figure out which tool makes the most sense for you as an individual person, and kind of do the prompting, do the iteration, and figure out what's best.
We have another viewer question. I'll go ahead and throw this one out right now. Once you find prompts that work for a particular project or situation, do you get similar results using the same prompts again on another project of a similar nature? Do you pilot groups help define what are the best prompts to use?
Yes. So I think the prompting, trying to create a prompt library is one of the goals that we had with our knowledge management team, is trying to figure out, like, for, let's say, I'm going to look at one example that I have here. Let's say for the M&A, practice group, right? If you find that you have, I'm going to use negotiation as an example, and you say, okay, analyze the language and identify potential issues or areas of concerns with this contract in preparation for negotiation. If it's a task that is, I would say repetitive, that you're constantly kind of doing those same types of tasks, then you can create a prompt library and share that with the overall team so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. The person who is doing the prompts can utilize that prompt that was already created to look for those similar type of instances. You may have to tweak it a little bit, I think, with each of the different, instances, because maybe it's not the same points of negotiation the next time around, but you want to be able to, use something just as kind of like a starter, right? So if you already have, a template, or in some companies, they call it like a SOP, a standard standard of procedure, I think it's what it's called. If someone could give you something like that to kind of help make, just kind of give you a jump start before you have to do the work. That's kind of how I see, you can utilize the prompt library and how, generative AI can be helpful in that way. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Is
We
that
have
helpful?
a question from Maureen. For the note-taking reference that was just made, do the meetings always need to be recorded to use on an AI tool for note-taking?
Not always, but I think in the instance where you do have the merger, because you have the project management office, you have an outside vendor that's doing the integration management work. And so if decisions are being made between those two teams, or you have a third party, which is the stakeholders in the business, right? So you're making decisions about how are we going to bring together the two entities? How are we going to incorporate, I'll use the examples that I work on is the accounting work streams. What is going to be our new approach to billing? What's going to be our new approach to invoicing clients? One firm was doing it one way, another firm was doing it another way. Operationally, you need to bring those teams together and those decisions need to be made. So in that instance, the note-taking is key, because let's say that, my manager's not able to make that meeting, but she wants to go back and kind of see what decisions were made from that meeting. She can just go back and look at the notes, or she can go back and listen to the recording to see what decisions were actually, made on that particular meeting to kind of move it forward. Or if that particular work stream impacts another area that's related, you want to be able to, kind of cross-reference that information. So I think in that instance, it's valuable to have the notes, but sometimes not every meeting is recorded. But in those instances where key decisions are being made, the note-taking is a feature that I think has been valuable. Does that answer your question, I hope?
I hope so. And if not, we'll certainly bring the follow-up question in. And so we have about 10 minutes left. So if you have questions, certainly I'll put this up on the screen here. Again, email us at scpers@binghamton.edu. We can go a little bit past 1 o'clock if we keep getting questions and the dialogue is good. So definitely get these in, because we have a couple more points I'm sure to cover before we get to 1 o'clock. And we want to make sure that we get your questions answered as well.
So as we kind of wrap up here, I just wanted to share some resources. And I've shared this with you already, Steve. So if you can send those around in a follow-up email, I'd be grateful. Some of the resources I want to share with folks is there is a weekly session with a group called Spark Up AI. And they are Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. And they have different presenters that will come in and talk about AI and just different things that are going on. And so it's just another forum for you to just hear what the subject matter experts are saying, or just what, this particular community is focused on. Because like I said, there are so many different avenues of learning about generative AI. Some people are doing more advanced work with what's called agentic AI. There's some people are doing things with like predictive analytics. I think it depends on your particular industry, where you're sort of focused. But I think it's just having these communities where people are, I look at it kind of like crowdsourcing. You have different people coming with different ideas to share. And it's just another opportunity for you to learn and to grow and to understand what's being discussed in the marketplace. And it's free. So, and they have a Slack community, and they have lots of other LinkedIn groups and different ways to network and understand what's going on in the space. Another one that I have found helpful. There's another question?
Yes, I was a little too slow to hit the button,
No,
but here I am. So in fact, we got an email from Maureen, and she had asked a question about note-taking. So here's a follow-up question on what she had asked just prior. How do you use AI for notes if the meeting is not being recorded?
Well, you can't really use it for the note-taking function because either people use the Zoom recording feature. Like when I have meetings, I'm instructed to use to start recording the meeting using Zoom. So that's already there. But there's also like AI companion. Some people use Otter. Some people use Fireflies. There's lots of different recording tools. For the purposes of work, I am instructed to record the meetings. But if you want to take, manual notes, on your own, that's fine. But in the instance where I'm using it for note taking, I am authorized to take those notes. And there are some other, considerations. I had to say, like, the general counsel has given me permission to take notes on these particular meetings. It has to be something that's not like, confidential, that if it gets out, it's going to cause harm to the firm and things of that nature. So I think having those parameters around it, I'm allowed to do it in that context. But if you're not given permission to do that, or, everyone on the call hasn't sort of said, yes, I want to be recorded and things of that nature, then I think, you wouldn't necessarily record a meeting. So hopefully, does that answer your question, Maureen? Hopefully.
Hopefully, and certainly, Maureen, shoot us a note if there's anything else additional that you'd like to ask. I have another viewer question. This has actually a comment with 2 questions attached. AI can feel like a bit of erasure of human talent as AI gains more intelligence. How can an employer and or client verify that an employee/vendor is using AI for administrative tasks versus critical thinking? How can someone prevent being discredited for using AI for admin tasks when the context and human professional experience informed the prompt that they used?
So that is that's a good question. I think it goes back to what I said before, which was to let's say you were crafting an email, or you were crafting, a marketing plan or a project plan. I think you can take the first pass at doing the task, right? So there are times when maybe I'll create an agenda for a meeting, or maybe I'll create a project plan for a meeting, and I will use certain verbiage and I will send it to my manager to say, hey, excuse me, can I just have an extra pair of eyes on this? Like, how does this sound, right? So I think if you think about it from the context, like if you didn't have AI, right, you would go to your, your coworker or your manager or someone else on your team, your peer, and ask them for, their input, right? So the way I look at AI is that it's like, it's an assistant, right? It's a way of you kind of validating or getting a secondary, input on the information that you've created. So I think that there are still opportunities for humans in the loop to do their work, be talented, give their first pass at something without feeling as though they have to use AI, or that AI is kind of taking over and that's all there is to it. I don't think there are, I know there are some software that, people can identify whether or not AI has been used to do some of the work, but I still do think that if you craft something, you're just using AI as an assistant to kind of verify or double check the information that you are ultimately going to hand in, output, things of that nature. Hopefully that answers your question. And if you have follow-up, then just let me know.
We'll keep it with you for the next couple of minutes. So I know you probably have a couple more things you wanted to get to before we wrap up. Say we give it about 5 more minutes, and that will allow time to see if any follow-up questions come in from the people we've heard from already, or if we get some new stuff coming in. And so I'll turn it back over to you.
Sure. So the other resource that I wanted to share is it's Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. It's called Getting Over the AI Hump, and that's on Meetup. And again, that's also a free resource. And it's IT pros getting over the AI hump. And I find that that group is very open. They kind of preface it by saying, like, there are different levels of understanding here about AI. So everyone is welcome. And if you are, a novice, rookie, you haven't had much input with or much experience with AI, they will, kind of walk you through the process. The person who is running it is very well versed in generative AI, and, takes the time, especially with newcomers, to understand, like, where are you, and tries to steer you in the right directions. They also kind of advise you on what certifications you should be pursuing if you're interested in, maybe you're seeking a new job opportunity. Maybe you want to do something more with AI. They will kind of advise in that area as well. So I find that to be a very valuable resource. And then another thing that they do every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern is they run a seminar called "Will AI Take Your Job?" Right? And it's just an open place for you to start to share and learn about artificial intelligence. It's about an hour long, and you have different people on that call. Some of them are repeat individuals from the Wednesday call because it's the same team that runs it, and they give some inputs about AI. I've been on one of those calls where they talk about individuals who are there are these companies that are let's say you're a PhD and they're sort of like want to take your knowledge and feed it into an AI system. There are companies that are paying for that information so they can train those AI systems. So that's something I learned about on that call. But what I've heard it said is that it's not AI that will take your job. It's the person who knows how to use AI that will be, on the sort of beneficiary end when it comes to AI. And then lastly, there's a resource. This might be more for people who are downstate because a lot of these events are in the New York City area, but they do have some virtual events. It's generativeAINY.com. There are walks that people go on. Like I did one, we walked across the Brooklyn Bridge all the way down to Dumbo, and you come back to the original place. We start at Delmonico's restaurant, we walk across the Brooklyn Bridge, we end up in Dumbo. And that's, you're just walking with other people and talking about AI. And it's a great way for you to connect with others and do some networking and share your knowledge. And then they have a WhatsApp group that you can join. They have other groups that are worldwide. They have groups that are local. So if you want to do a walk in, Buenos Aires, or you're going to happen to be in Buenos Aires, this group extends to all these various different parts of the world, not just New York City. So it's a great way for you to connect. And if you do want to just learn an informal setting without having to be, I think the concept is not to be on a meetup or, in front of a computer, but to actually be out with other people and learning. That's another great resource that I would recommend. So as I said, it's an emerging technology. There's a lot to be learned. There's a lot of things that are still being developed on a day-to-day basis about AI. And if you are interested in learning more about AI, like I said, I wanted to just give, sort of a brief overview of my experience. And I'm really excited about AI. I'm really excited about the technology and where I think it can go. And I do think there are lots of opportunities for AI governance and different things as an employment opportunity in the future. So that is all I wanted to share with everyone today. I hope people got something out of the session. And I'm on LinkedIn if anyone wants to connect. And if you have any other questions, send them to Steve. And if there's anything else that I can answer, I can certainly send them back to Steve if there's any additional things outside of the session today.
Absolutely. If you're watching and you think of a question later, go ahead and shoot me an email, and I'll be in touch with Simone, and we'll make sure to get these questions answered. And we don't have any viewer questions coming in at this point, but I'll share a comment that came by way of Facebook. So thank you very much for your time, effort, and expertise. Have a productive, enjoyable rest of the week. Kim, thank you so much for sending that comment to us. It's always great to hear that people enjoy what it is that we put together. And I always say, if it helps out at least one person, hopefully more than that, but if it helps out at least one, then it was worth it to roll out of bed and get down here today and do the program. And so it's always great to have alumni that are generous with their time and their expertise, and they want to share with other members of the Binghamton University community. So Simone, thank you so much for being part of the webinar today. We really appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you, Steve. And thanks everyone for joining. Enjoy the rest of your day.
And just a couple of quick notes before we wrap up for today. A tremendous amount of information was shared. And if you want to go back and take a look at any of this, as soon as we go ahead and log off with a slight delay in between, the recording is going to be automatically archived and available through our website. So this is the microsite, alumlc.org/Binghamton. And this will be the place where the the recording will be archived, so you can go back and take a look and listen to anything that you feel you wanted to take another listen to. If there's something that was thrown out, you feel like want to go back and revisit because it was something important to me, that's all there. And then Simone mentioned the resources that she has shared with me that I can send out then probably at some point either later today or tomorrow. Anyone that had signed up for this webinar and viewed it, and we can keep track of who viewed it. You get a custom viewing link that's unique to you, and we're able to see at the end on the backside in the admin who specifically had watched it. So I give time for all of that to kind of settle in, and then I can be in touch with you with that information. And certainly if there's anything else that you require, just let us know. We're here to help you, and we're very, very passionate about that. So we have a webinar coming up first week of December on that Wednesday, looking at resumes. And so if you're thinking about job hunting as something that you need or want to do when we get into the front part of 2026, you'll want to be part of that session with Andrew Wilner, I believe from the class of 1992 from Cadence Consulting in the Boston area. He's going to be the featured speaker for that webinar. So be sure to join us for that event. And that will wrap it up for today. I'll put this up one more time. Our website to learn more about all it is that we do, whether it's a lifelong learning program or a volunteer opportunity, an event you can attend in person or virtually, all sorts of ways that you can be connected to us here at Binghamton University. That's the reason we're here at the Alumni Association, is to help make those connections happen. So for Simone Sterling, I'm Steve Seepersod. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you on the next webinar.